Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today, Scrum in India. We're going to have a nice panel discussion, and our panelists are all professional Scrum trainers with Scrum.org, spread across India, and today literally spread quite across as people are starting to celebrate the holiday and heading back to their hometowns as well. So we'll have some great coverage across the country talking about things that they're seeing, things that they're doing, and what they're seeing with clients as they're working with them and helping them to adopt Scrum. So my name is Eric Neiberg, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at Scrum.org, and I'm going to moderate today's panel, but really I'm not the important one. It's Sanjay, it's Hiren, and Nagesh who are really going to give you the answers. Please feel free to ask questions, and I'll talk about that in a moment, and we'll hand it over to them in a few seconds. Just real briefly, a little bit about Scrum.org. You may not know this, and sometimes we get isolated and don't realize that if you look at a lot of the surveys that have happened, a lot of things that are going on, over 90% of Agile teams today are using Scrum in some way. They may not be fully using and fully adopting Scrum, but they're using Scrum. Maybe they're having daily Scrums and so on. 90%, that equals about 12 million people around the world doing Scrum. Scrum just celebrated, or actually it's about to celebrate its 22nd birthday. And it's pretty amazing how large this has gotten and how successful organizations have been, yet at the same time, we are still always learning. We're still constantly changing. And when you think about what Scrum is, right, an empirical process, it is about always learning. It is about always changing. Just a little bit about Scrum.org. We have open assessments, which are free to help you test and understand your knowledge, help you know where you need to learn, help you inspect and adapt. And we've had over 1.6 million people take those assessments around the world. We've got over 130,000 professional Scrum certifications, or people who have taken and passed our certification tests. And we've got about almost 200 trainers now globally, all teaching the same material, the same content, working together as a community to share their knowledge and understanding of Scrum around the world, which is equal to over 83,000 people taught globally. A little bit about Scrum Pulse. This is a free monthly webinar series by Scrum.org, the home of Scrum. We're founded by, and our chairman is Ken Schwaber, the creator of Scrum. And Ken still continues to be very involved in the organization and helping us to drive Scrum forward and continuing to evolve. Those of you who subscribe to our newsletter saw there'll be a new version of the Scrum Guide coming out later this year. And Ken will be hosting a webinar with Jeff Sutherland, his co-creator, talking about what those changes are, so check that out as well. You can always subscribe and check out the recordings that we have of the Scrum Pulses. There are about 30 or so of them out there. So some quick guidelines. You will all be muted throughout this session, but we encourage questions and discussion. So you can either tweet at Scrum.org, hashtag ScrumPulse, or the easier and quicker way to do it is get in the little box on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar panel and ask questions, and we'll take them. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be available in the next day or so up on the website for you to check out. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sanjay. Sanjay?
Hey, thanks, Eric. Hello, everyone. This is Sanjay Saini. I would like to give a very quick intro about myself. So, approximately 20 years of experience, worked across different domains. So, I used to be a traditional project manager. So, I got my first opportunity to work in a Scrum environment maybe 8-9 years back. And actually, I started as a typical Scrum developer or as a part of the development team member. I went through all three roles: Scrum Master, the product owner also, and later on I got associated with Scrum.org as a professional Scrum trainer. Right now I'm working with a company or a bank named Royal Bank of Scotland, based out of Gurgaon, for helping them in their or supporting them in their agile journey. So my mantra is basically, I live integrity, think customer, ignite passion, take accountability, promote innovation, and achieve greatness. On my personal side, actually, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, but somehow it didn't work out. So here I am. So I'm going to be a co-learner along with you guys for the session. That's it. Over
Thank you, Sanjay. Hiren?
Hello everyone, this is Hiren Doshi. I'm also affiliated with Scrum.org for the past 3 years. I've been doing a lot of trainings, a lot of coaching. So there are a lot of companies that I've helped or I'm helping right now. So few companies that have led agile transformations for are Dell EMC, Bank of America, BookMyShow. If you're using online ticketing, I've helped them. Sabre Travels, where I've been coaching the coaches over there. Continuum, Tesco, Avexa. So plenty of companies that I've been coaching. So if you look at my portfolio, I can divide it into like 30-70, where 30% of the time I'll spend training, doing Scrum.org trainings, but 70% of my time I will spend working with the teams, hands-on, helping them on the coaching front. I'm also an author for the book Scrum Insights for Practitioners, the Scrum Guide Companion. It's available throughout the world on Amazon, so you can look it up whenever you get a chance, or you can drop me an email and I'll be happy to ship you one free copy. Yeah. Apart from that, again, my qualification is MS in Computer Science. Have around good 22 years of experience, out of which for the past 12 years I've been practicing Agile. That's about me. I look forward to the questions that you have. Thank you so much. Nagesh?
So good evening, everybody. My name is Nagesh Sharma. I'm ally in your journey today in this session along with Sanjay and Hiren. I started my career in industry 14 years back as in steel, electrical, and instrumentation. And then I moved to a company called ABB, where actually my agile journey started with RUP, Rational Unified Processes. And my association with Scrum started approximately a decade before as a development team member. That's when I started appreciating the power of Scrum and got opportunity to play the role of Scrum Master for a couple of years. And that's when I got to know what it means to be there and do that. And my love and affection for Scrum has gone exponentially more when I started allying with Scrum.org approximately 2 years back as a professional Scrum trainer, and I help organizations teaching and coaching, mentoring with Scrum. I'm also a ICF certified coach, which means that I'm very passionate about coaching, helping people with the transformation experience. Currently, I'm engaged with a couple of clients, helping them with banking and embedded systems. As Hiren rightly said, my work is also approximately like 20% it goes for training, and 80 to 85% goes mostly in coaching part. That's pretty much about me, and I'm really looking forward to share and learn from all of you today, and looking forward to your questions now. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Nagesh. So once again, if you have questions for the team, feel free to start asking them over in that panel. But just to get us started, I think there's some basic things that are happening out there, and some basic things that we see. I think something that comes up quite a bit, and certainly I hear this here in the States, and in dealing with folks in software development in India, and I'm sure you're hearing it on the same side. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, guys, on many software, most software organizations are geographically distributed. Teams are all over the world at this point, as the world is becoming flatter and flatter. So what are some of the suggestions that you have in helping distributed teams use Scrum, and how distributed Scrum teams can work together?
So maybe I can just start over here if that helps. So all the organizations that I've been working with for the past 7 years in India, before that I was in US, so 2010 when I relocated back over here, for the past 7 years, I've been working with many organizations. I've worked with Tesco. They had a distributed division. They worked in the Bangalore geography and the UK geography. I worked with RSA. They have between Bangalore again, and then they have it in US. I'm working with ANZ right now. They are also having between Bangalore, New Zealand, Australia. So every organization I'm working with, it is distributed. So that is way of life. We have to accept it, acknowledge it, that the talent pool, it is very difficult to find talent pool co-located in one location. In fact, even the local companies over here, we are seeing that, you know what, they're not able to find the talent within one geography. So they are distributed between Mumbai, maybe they'll go to Bangalore, maybe they'll go to some other cities. But this is way of life. And we have to acknowledge it that, you know, if co-location gives us 100%, with distribution, we are not going to get 100%. But it's not an excuse anymore anyway, because with this technology that we have, with polycoms, telepresence, having some type of overlap, so that, you know what, we get 3 or 4 hours of overlap between different sites. People have accepted it and acknowledged it, and I think people have moved forward. So it is happening, it is working out well. But yes, there are challenges in terms of, you know, most of the work mostly comes from the other countries. The product owners reside out in the other geography. So sometimes there is a delay in decision making, getting consensus, and there are delays. But I think it's all for good though.
Yeah, that's great. So just to add into it, whatever Hiren said, so it's okay to have a distributed team setup, but I think we should be a bit careful between the distributed team setup versus overly distributed. So I have seen people who actually, without thinking about it, whether we can actually have a co-located team or not, they start putting their people in whatever location they find them. That may or may not be the best way of doing it, but still, it's up to the an individual organization how they would like to put up their team. Second is one of the things actually we did when I was working in a distributed setup was we spent a lot of budget on travel. So we had 12 teams distributed across 3 geographies: US, India, and Germany. But we put in a lot of budget just for travel, so that people are traveling a lot, and that thing actually helps in setting up the initial rapport with each other in a team.
I would like to complement what just Hiren and Sanjay said. Firstly, that it is not an excuse that if you are having distributed teams, then you get a waiver on doing, adopting good Scrum. And secondly, again, having a fair balance, and see that we do not overly distribute the stuff. Few of the things which I have seen within the framework itself are so powerful. I have used with a couple of the teams which I have been coaching is having the teams aligned with the Scrum values: focus, openness, commitment, courage, and respect. One of the things which has really helped me and teams distributed was when the teams are starting, having them some kind of workshops together and coming up with some kind of working agreements based on the values. And Scrum Masters used to play a very key role here, reminding the teams again and again about these values, living them out, and this has given us really, a very good alignment with respect to streamlining the stuff and delivering more value towards the customers.
Thank you, Sanjay. So, kind of taking a step back, and we kind of jumped into Scrum, but at the heart of all of this is Agile. And many organizations are still just getting started. So what are some of the suggestions, and maybe we'll start with Nagesh this time, what are some of the suggestions that you have to kickstart an Agile journey?
Sure, Eric. One of the first things first to kickstart in an agile journey is we call it as, and this is something which we do it with all the Scrum teams, and I have facilitated with 30 odd teams. We call it as kick on together, which means that all the distributed teams, some kind of telepresence or some virtual presence, or if possible face-to-face presence, have everybody come together and do some kind of a visioning workshop together, and having the product owner set the vision and guide the teams. What are we trying to build? Why are we trying to build? Why do we exist? And once the visioning is clear to people, then have a collaboration workshop saying that what it means for us to look like a team. What are our team values? What are our virtues? What is our team manifesto? And what are our team agreements? I'm sure there could be many practices, emergent practices in this particular zone. However, this kick-on stuff, how to kickstart a new Scrum team or an Agile team, that I have found very extremely powerful, Eric.
Yep. Just to add into whatever Nagesh said. So I think this is really a good thing to do. So, and it again depends on whether you are starting up in a new team within an existing organization, or the entire organization is starting up fresh. So there will be a difference between these two. So if you are some of the teams are already following Scrum and you are starting up a new team, then it may be a bit easy for the new team. But if it is going to be the first team in an organization to start, I think then there are going to be I would say initially some challenges as well as some preparation work in the sense of maybe getting a buy-in from everyone. So what I have seen based on my experience is that people have started or the organization has started doing it maybe just within the technology without actually involving the upper stream or the lower stream. That may have some challenge, and actually I have seen them facing challenges later on. So I think the first thing as an organization should do is getting in a buy-in from end to end. That will be really helpful going forward. Great. And when I say end to end, basically it involves even the business, the technology, and maybe the third part, the support or whatever you call it, from end to end in the value stream. That helps.
That is so true, Sanjay. Can I just follow up on this? So many companies, when they call me that we want to embark on this agile journey, what are your thoughts? What are your suggestions? The first question that I ask them is, what is your baseline right now? Where are you? Why do you want to move towards agile? What are some reasons? What are some end goals that you're striving for? Because it's like, there are many companies, they have been practicing certain way of doing things for so long. It's like, I am a left-handed person. I'm used to writing with my left hand, and all of a sudden someone says, you know what? No, you have to start writing using your right hand. It is very difficult. Yeah. So to move to your right hand, it's like, the agile mindset, it takes a lot of effort. It's like changing your culture. It's doing that mindset shift. So are you ready for it? Are you willing to invest in that? Are you willing to educate people on that? So it takes a bit of an understanding of your DNA. Where are you in your journey? What is the final goal that you're trying to achieve? And how can you build that bridge so that we can take you to the next side and next towards the other end? And it is a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. So sometimes what you also see when people start practicing Scrum and things, that 20% is the mechanics. It's like we have 3 roles, 5 events, and maybe 3 artifacts. But eventually, when it comes to the mindset change, the cultural shift that 80% that people have to work for, that's where the challenge happens. Oh, but it was working earlier, and now we are trying to do these new ways of things, and we are not able to see results. So that's where the challenge happens. So understanding, having the baseline, and then what is your reasons, what is your end goal? I think it's extremely important, and then build a bridge to go towards the end. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hiren. So just to add into it, so Hiren mentioned about the cultural part. So I have seen organization actually hiring or contacting a coach so that he or she can come and actually change the culture of the organization without actually themselves changing any of their behavioral practice, which is not going to work at all. So when we talk about cultural change, I think a coach may help, but it's only the people who are part of that culture or part of that organization have to change their behavior, their practice to make it happen.
So coming back, so sort of, and this is a follow-on to the initial question about geographies. Bhuvan has a question specifically more about product owners in distributed teams, but their question: teams based out of India often have co-located Scrum Masters and development teams, but the product owners often in another geography. What are your thoughts and experiences around a proxy product owner? I know that's not, there's no such thing, but or business analysts who are helping that product owner to drive and deliver on those requirements.
So every organization that I have worked with, we have this subtle problem where the product owner resides in the different geography. Yeah, that is a given because most of the works come from there, most of the clients are over there, so the product owner is basically visiting the customers, getting all these requirements. So that is a given. So the idea is, can that product owner still do a good job, find a time where he can meet the teams regularly and can give ideas, exchange ideas with the teams and take them forward? Most likely the answer is going to be, when it comes to the Indian context and depending on which part of the geography you are in, you will see that you will need that additional help. So if you call it proxy product owner, you call it business analyst, whatever you want to call him, there has to be enough trust that has to be established between that business analyst / proxy product owner and the actual product owner. If that trust exists, everything is good, everything is hunky-dory. But if you ask a question to the business analyst and the business analyst or the proxy PO says, you know what, hold on, I need to go and check with my PO to get you the answer, I think that is very wrong. It's like a secretary just taking the message from here to the other side and getting the message back. We don't want that. There has to be enough trust, enough domain knowledge on whoever this appointed person is who is going to act on behalf of the product owner, and he should be able to help the team move forward rather than becoming a hurdle. So this is what, at least this is how we have started practicing over here, that okay, if you are a proxy PO, are you empowered to make decisions on behalf of your PO? Yes, certain things I agree that you might have to go to the PO to ask questions, but more or less, are you empowered and can you take it forward? If not, we don't want that person over there.
Yep,
I will just pull upon the thread what Hiren just said, and very rightly Hiren talked about the trust between the whoever is playing the role of the proxy product owner or a business analyst and the product owner who is having the mandate. There is another trust which is required between the whoever is playing that role, proxy, and the development team, because what happens if this person who is in between the product owner and the development team not empowered enough, then there is no trust between the development team and that person. And what happens then is there is no respect for that person, there is no trust, and then that happens to be a postmaster or a secretary, as Hiren said. So I think the empowerment is the key here in this situation.
Yep, I think +1 to whatever Nagesh said. So I also follow the same approach, or I also suggest the same thing to my customer or client. I generally avoid using the word proxy, reason being, as a development team member, whomsoever has been appointed as a product owner is actually a PO for me or for my team. I really don't care whether what he or she is working with someone external or someone sitting on the other geography, but for making that happen, as Hiren already mentioned, that trust and the respect is required, not only between the development team and the PO versus the PO versus someone who is sitting in a different geography, the actual PO, whatever you call him or her. So that's very true. I agree.
Great, thanks, guys. So Krishna has a question, and do you have any best practices for planning releases?
Yes, in fact, I did one today for one of the companies. big room planning. Yeah, there are a lot of concepts from a lot of different frameworks that are available. So yeah, release plan, is it still, the question is around distributed, or it's about co-location at this point?
It's just in general.
It's in general, yes. Yeah, so normal now, very soon we have realized that, we can't have just one team work on the product backlog to get the results that we are looking for. So in fact, you do have to have multiple Scrum teams working of the same product backlog, having one product owner, and you still have to deliver something that is potentially releasable. Now, when you have this situation, when there are 2 or 3 teams, it's easy. But as soon as you have like 12 to 15 teams that come in, very soon you also realize that, there are a lot of dependencies, there are going to be a lot of integration challenges. So it is so important that there is some type of kickoff meeting that happens, where people get into a room, where they discuss amongst each other, what they identify the minimum viable product. And there are so many best practices that are available out there, using story mapping to figure out the MVP. So you can do that, collaborate, say, okay, how can we take one feature at a time and get it to completion as soon as possible, rather than multitasking on multiple features. So this is the discussion that happens normally in this big room planning to help you have that fantastic focus to get something out of the door as quickly as possible, deliver business value, increase the return of investment, and make your customers happy. This is just one practice, though. There are so many other practices out there. And I'm sure Nagesh and Sanjay will have a lot many more practices that they can share.
Absolutely. Thanks, Hiren. And I would just like to compliment, and it seems like all the PhDs are thinking alike today. So I would just like to compliment what Hiren just said. In fact, 1 week back, I also facilitated a big room planning. And the key here is that having all the people, either physically or virtually, coming together to align to the business goals and the vision of what are we trying to build for the future releases. Not to forget at the same time that agility is not about predicting the future, but it is about opportunistic discovery. Though we can try planning releases, but it's just a forecast, and it's just an assumed value till it is being validated by the marketplace. And as Hiren rightly said, there are many techniques. What I like personally is user story mapping to identify the MVPs. And if somebody wants to explore that, who is in the call, I would highly recommend them to read a book by Jeff Patton, User Story Mapping. It's Jeff Patton, User Story Mapping. So that's pretty much understandable, and that helps you explore and do it yourself kind of stuff. Very, very useful and extremely beneficial for identifying your MVP, super awesome stuff.
So I can give you an example where how we used to do, maybe I think 4 or 5 years back, and I witnessed a couple of them. So our product owner used to come in a room along with some of representative from each team, maybe 2 or 3 members from each team, and then he used to give us a brief overview about what he is looking for. And we used to do that the t-shirt size based estimation. So based on the estimation, he used to decide that what is looking feasible or what makes sense to him in the next release, and then once that is decided, then we used to pick it from there at individual level, more detail level planning. But I think the high level for deciding that MVP or the release, we used to have an at least half-day meeting or 3-hour meeting for that release planning. And we used to do a very quick estimation. It's not going into detail enough. So we used to have maybe a t-shirt sizing, where a t-shirt size of M may represent between 3 to 5 sprints, often a 6-member following in a 3-week sprint, something like that. At the end of that activity, at the end of that estimation activity, we used to get in a number of sprints required for these many team, and then based on that, the product owner will decide whether it really makes sense to him to include this feature as a part of the release or not, and then let's go for it.
Great. So the next we have got a couple more questions have come in. The next question from Ankar, and actually I sent Ankar a link as well, and I'll say why in a second. how does Scrum help with continuous integration, or should I say DevOps? So make sure that, one of the things before I send it over to the panel, there's some great resources on the Scrum.org website under the resources tab. If you search on DevOps, there's a brand new white paper written jointly between our CEO, Dave West, and the CEO of the DevOps Institute on the convergence of Scrum and DevOps and how those things definitely do come very much together, right? If Dev is Scrum, and talking about how DevOps and Scrum come they converge. They very much work together. And the fact that it's all about communication when you talk about DevOps, and Scrum is very much about communication and pushing things forward. There's nothing in the Scrum guide that says you cannot deliver many times per sprint. You just must have at least one potentially deliverable increment per sprint, but you can have thousands. So I just wanted to kind of hit on that and check out that white paper, but I'm going to hand it over to the panel of experts on, how do you believe Scrum helps with continuous integration in DevOps?
So the way I see it is, I like to keep it very simple. Every sprint is an opportunity to deliver something of potentially realizable product increment to your customers. Yeah, that is the end goal that we want to achieve. And to achieve that end goal, there are so many fantastic engineering practices out there in terms of continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, automation, pair programming. All these different tools have to be made use of to reach the end goal. I've worked with so many organizations where we say, you know what, oh, we are done with our part. Now it has been handed over to a DevOps team and they have to put it into production. Yes, that is your current model and that is what you want to do. That is fine. But make sure there is a better way of doing things. Is it possible to pull these people and make them part of your Scrum team in some way so that you can deliver? You have to deliver at least once every sprint. But if you want to deliver 1,000 times within a sprint, do it. If you want to do it every minute, you should be able to do it. But get to that level and use automation. It can't be manual because manual cycles are very error prone. They are very lengthy. So you have to think in terms of automation, put that fantastic tools into practice, and take it forward.
Yep. And I generally say to people that DevOps for me seems like more of a common sense. Don't we think that, oh, it's not only for the others? Even I also, when I do more of an introspection, I always think that whatever DevOps is saying, don't you think we were supposed to work that way? So as Hiren already mentioned, Scrum actually doesn't prescribe any technical practices, but DevOps has come up with so many technical practices within some really good name against it, which is actually exciting the people. So I was reading that book, and when I went through each of the practices, I felt that this is the way we used to work. There's nothing new, but there are people, there are organizations who are not doing the way they should be. So for them, it may be something new, but there are organizations, there are people who are actually doing the same way for the last couple of years. So it's not new for them, but maybe new for others.
Yeah, as a closing note for this question, I would just again reiterate what Eric said in the beginning to the folks who are on the call to go through in the Scrum.org resources, where we have a great article written by Dave West, which is Building Bridges, Not Walls, Scrum and DevOps Better Together. And also want to compliment what Sanjay said, that there are many myths and people say which is better, Agile, DevOps or Scrum. So I think it is time now for everyone to stop bickering about the stuff and start focusing on delivering value and try bridging bridges between Scrum and DevOps and try to complement each other and take the best of both.
And I've put the white paper in the chat, so a link to the white paper in the chat, and here's a link to that blog article as well in the chat. So feel free to check those out when time allows. So let's go on to the next question. So how should integration development be planned and managed, since source and target might be different and belong to different teams? This kind of ties to that last question, I guess, a little bit. What more beyond Scrum of Scrum meetings and so on might apply here? And this is probably a good opportunity for you guys to talk a little bit about Nexus as well. Anybody?
Yeah, I can. So basically, in the Indian context, right? Since we are talking about Scrum in India, so many organizations, what we see is they prefer buying software rather than building it in-house. So I'm working with one of the banks right now. What they do is they don't have like one or two vendors. They have like 30, 40 odd vendors. They will go and that's okay, this is our project, you do it for us. And they will procure that work from them, and eventually they will integrate this work together and mash it up all together, and that's their final product. Yeah. So that is how it works. So now if you can imagine, if you have 30 vendors, 30 different companies working towards one common product increment, it itself is a challenge because everyone will have different priorities. So the alignment and everything becomes so important. So if you take this one step further, the Nexus integration team that we talk of as part of Nexus, where you have one common product owner. So can you imagine that there is a goal called G that has to be achieved? This G is divided into G1, G2, G3, G4, and Gn. And all these goals are given to these different vendors. So eventually all these vendors have to be aligned. And when all this alignment happens, that streamlining happens, you're going to get goal G. But imagine in a sprint, everyone is working towards that goal, but there is one vendor who is not working towards that goal. They're working on something else. And there is a misalignment that happens. And when that misalignment happens, the amount of money that is lost because everyone else is ready, but because of this one vendor, you're not able to achieve goal G. It has two repercussions. One is basically you're not able to take something out to your customers, but bigger thing is opportunity cost. Your competition is that much ahead of you. So it is so important to have that fantastic alignment, having that one person aligning, streamlining different vendors, ensuring that there's a common goal that you're striving towards, and are we streamlined? So it becomes so important.
Yep, and just to add into it, whatever Hiren said, so he already talked about having a single PO, which really helps in this complex environment. And though we agree or not agree to, but this is actually happening in the industry where we have a really complex system, multiple vendors, multiple teams across different geographies, different locations are working on it. So obviously it may look like still in a more of a common sense, but I think having more of a collaboration, communication will help in this case. And I think the question included a word called Scrum of Scrum. People may have a different terminology, may have a different practices which they would like to use. The Scrum of Scrum could be one of them. So it again up to them, whatever works them for them may be helpful. If you ask me, actually we use this in one of my project 6 years back, and we used to have Scrum of Scrum maybe for each role. For one Scrum of Scrum for the development team, where we were discussing more on our delivery or our product increment. There wasn't a Scrum of Scrum happening at the product owner level, and they used to discuss more on the product dependency across multiple products if there is any. Then there was a Scrum of Scrum for the Scrum Master. Basically they used to talk more about improving the process. So it helps, but may not be the only practice you should do. There are so many other.
So can we bring it back a little? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I just wanted to hammer a little bit on the importance of the doneness part when multiple teams are working together and trying to build something for a single product. So there may be many different practices or process frameworks that organizations or the teams might use. Nexus could be one of them. But whatever you do, important is to make sure that when multiple teams are working together, their combined work needs to be potentially releasable. and they should be able to create a potentially releasable increment, integrated increment at the end of the sprint. And if that is not happening, whatever scrum of scrums you do or whatever kind of dependency management you do, everything will go up for a toss. So it's key that all the teams comes together and they combinedly define the definition of done for the product. That is something I wanted to emphasize on.
Great. Agree.
So we've talked about some specific India things like geographically distributed teams. We've talked about a lot of generic, I'd say, Scrum things as well that could happen anywhere in the world. Kind of getting back local, back to the Indian market itself. There are some cultural things that could potentially get in the way of good Scrum. One of them being, how do you approach cultural issues like dealing with people seeing the Scrum Master as a hierarchical role rather than as a coach, which is pretty common in India. So what are some of the cultural things that you see in country that might be preventing good Scrum, and how do you overcome them, similar to this one?
I think that's
I can start.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Nagesh, go ahead.
No problem. I think we can write a book on this with respect to the cultural barriers for Agile adoption or Scrum adoption in any context. So one of the things which I see very frequently is that fear of people. When I say fear of people, that means that not having a safe environment within which the self-organization can foster or people can, portray the courage behavior. And that could be because of the kind of traditional mindset or traditional management which the people are used to. Wherever somebody would have tried raising a concern and they should have been seen as, oh, you are raising a concern, that means you are not able to solve your problems by yourself. That is something which I've been seeing a lot. And for this, what has worked for me is whenever any kind of engagement I'm working with, for me the key is to take the buy-in from the leadership and management and coach them first, coach the leaders first, and then help them transition from more a traditional mindset to an agile mindset, from a traditional management to an empirical management, in which they help create that environment within which the teams can self-organize and they can create something which is valuable for the customer. And this is not easy. People might be on the call who would say that how is it easy for someone who is a traditional project manager to make a shift? But what I would say is it is worth it. So unless the leaders are vulnerable, it is not possible for the Scrum Masters or the development teams to show that vulnerability and create trust. Sanjay, please go ahead.
Yep, sure. So I think it may not be just specific to Indian culture, it may be for other cultures also. So if you are in a software industry and you have not reached a manager level in maybe in your first 6 years, there is something wrong with you. And what I have seen with most of the managers, since the organization has adopted Scrum or they are going to follow new ways of working, so most of the managers generally come and ask, or they, not to me, maybe even to their supervisor, whether shall I take the role of Scrum Master or shall I take the role of PO, product owner. But no one ever have asked me, or at least to me, that is it possible for me to take the role of a development team member. So that's a change actually which is required in people's mindset. And I think one simple thing which may help is basically it's more of an assurity or more of an assurance from the leadership itself that, hey guys, and the reason for doing it is people feel insecure about their job. They feel that if they don't get adopted in one of the Scrum Master or a development team or the product owner role, they may be at the verge of losing their job. Reason being either they are not hands-on or they don't understand the development stuff as of now, which may or may be valid. But one thing at least the leadership team can do is to assure those guys that this is going to be a long journey, and we assure you that your job is secured, but role may not be. So that, I believe this will help. People will feel safe that, boss, I can give my 100%. I may try to learn something new also, but I have an assurity from my company that my job will continue.
So I have something to add over here in addition to what Nagesh and Sanjay said. So if you look at the Indian context, I think we just have to go like 10, 15 years back. So at some point in time, India was seen as low cost development center over here. Yeah. So that's how it was. And what used to happen was the type of work that we used to get over here was more about business as usual, maintenance type of work, support type of work. So that's what most of the organizations over here, the offshore development centers or outsourcing organizations are doing over here. But that is no longer true anymore. Yeah, even though we are still cost effective over here, the trends are changing. The things at time, the type of work we are doing is changing. People are realizing, you know what, there is a great potential in this talent pool over here in India, where they just don't have to do maintenance work. They can do a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity. So lots of things are flowing over here. Earlier, there was a challenge where people will not say no to anything. Whenever someone says, okay, can you do this? They'll say, yes, we'll do it. Of late, things are changing. People say, you know what? Yes, we cannot do it. They will have the courage. They're trying to live the Scrum values. The trends are changing. The things are becoming much clearer. It's very easy. It's getting much easier to adopt Scrum, to embrace Scrum, to embark on this journey. I think they're in a very good place. I was just doing some math or just doing some research, statistics on the Indian geography about the IT. 10 million IT engineers in this workforce. That's what we are having. 10 million. It's a $155 billion industry. There are 4,200 startups in the country. The export revenue is 117 billion. That's a lot of money. We have saved, like, over the past 5 years, we have saved like $200 billion for the world by doing the software development over here. This is awesome. And this can only happen because people are standing up and they're doing these awesome things. Yes, there are some challenges that we have to fix. But I think we are working to it. We are understanding it. Just recently, I did a training for one of the clients. The vendor, he said, you know what? The client was willing to pay for the training to the vendor, even though the vendor is outsourced totally. They said, you know what, we want to invest money in this. We will give you Scrum training. This is our money because you're doing work for us. Go ahead and educate yourself and give us that fantastic product. So this is awesome.
Yep. So tied to that question, guys. So do you have some recommendations on best ways to deal with distributed teams? So, for example, some team members are in the U.S., others are in India. Is there a good way for maybe grouping the team, the Scrum team, the development team? This part of the development team lives here. This part lives there, or only the product owner should be here. Do you have any recommendations or some best practices that you've seen?
Actually, I can give my experience on it. So we tried multiple options. So as I think Hiren has already mentioned in the first part, so there will always be some challenges. We started with having a product owner sitting in US and the rest of the team here along with the Scrum Master. Then we have half of the development team even sitting along with the product owner in US. Then we have even the product owner working from India, but we had a different challenge when the product owner was here. Reason he doesn't have much connect with the end user or the customer. So there will be challenges involved, but what we used to do is I already covered it, maybe having more of a travel, maybe using some video conferencing a lot. So those things generally helps, but may not be as good as in a co-located team.
I would just like to add one thing to note here is why are we developing software? To solve some business problems. That's the key. And keeping that in mind, trying to identify how is actually value flowing in the entire system, right from concept to cash, try to identify that and it could be the case that in order to achieve or realize that particular value, you might want to cross across different geographical locations, and in order to do that, you might end up having multiple teams spread across different geographies. However, nothing harm doing that, because that's the reality of the life. Key here again to remember is try to minimize the dependencies as much as possible. Try to create teams which can produce or create a potentially releasable increment at the end of the sprint. Try to have frequent integrations so that we have a saying, right? If it hurts, do it more often. So if you are trying to integrate and something breaks, then do it more often. So try to have those best practices in place. Try to leverage automation practices and some kind of visualization techniques for dependency management. Because if you end up with multiple teams, you put the best effort to create feature teams, but still you might end up having some dependencies. So try to have visualization of that, make it more transparent, and frequently inspect and adapt. That's what is my recommendation. And in this case.
Yeah, on the talking about the engineering practice, when we were working, so we used to follow 3-week sprint, in which 1 week was just reserved for the integration when we started actually. But over a period of time, we reduce it to just half an hour. So when we say half an hour, which means multiple times even during the day. So it's okay, or we cannot deny that fact that there will be a distributed setup, but we should keep investing and we should keep improving on our engineering practices also. Those helps a lot.
So just piggybacking on that, Eric, if I can just get a minute on this.
Yep.
Just piggybacking on this. So keep it as simple as, make it empirical. We have accept it first, accepting the fact that, our talent pool is distributed. That is the fact of life. We have multiple choices where we can lay off one of the side totally and hire the pool, but that should be the last resort. Understanding, okay, this is how the organization has operated so far. We have so much knowledge in-house, and now we are going to embark on the journey of Agile. Let's try it out. Let's form a couple of teams. These are distributed teams. Every sprint, use it as an opportunity to learn, okay, what is working well for us? What are our challenges? Look at your challenges and see, is there something that we can do about it? Can we be better than yesterday? Can we do something different over here? And just keep on experimenting it till you find your own niche. You have to understand your DNA. Just because this worked in some organization is not going to work for your organization. Just because if something worked for other team within your organization doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. You understand your DNA, figure out what is going to work for you, experiment it, learn from it. If it works for you, good for you, keep going. If not, try something different. Because if you want to change the output, you have to change the input. Giving the same input again and again, expecting different output is insanity. That we should definitely not do that. So if you want to do something good, something different, try to change your parameters. Most likely you're going to achieve your results that you're looking for. So that is my suggestion when it comes to this distribution. Try it out, experiment. Have that courage to experiment. Worst case, you learn something from it, and from there you improve and take it to the next level.
So in an effort to keep to our time box, I want to thank our panelists today, Sanjay, Hiren, Nagesh. Thank you for taking the time out. Thank you, audience, as well. I know for many of you it's the evening there and you're taking time away from your families and your personal time to listen to this. The recording or the webcast will be recorded and it will be available for replay on the website within the next day or so. You'll get an email announcing that and the location. But connect up. Some of the responses I've had to questions and been able to answer either verbally or via the Q&A panel, a lot of the answers are already out there. There were questions about does a Scrum Master have to be technical? Well, Barry Overveen, one of our trainers, actually wrote a blog on it last month. So check out the blog, check out the forum. If you have questions, ask those questions out on the forum. Your peers, other trainers, and so on are out there answering these questions on a daily basis. So check out the forum, check out the blog, read those blog articles, search for things that you might be interested in. And with that, again, thank you to the audience, thank you to our panelists, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.